Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to episode 228 of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, executive editor of Total Retail. Joining me today is Annie Hurlbut, founder and CEO of Peruvian Connection, an internationally renowned brand for luxury Peruvian textiles and fibers. We're going to be discussing Peruvian Connection's commitment to environmental sustainability and how that manifests itself throughout the organization. Thanks for joining me, Annie.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for the invitation.
So I want to start by having you briefly tell our audience, for those that might not be familiar with the brand, a little bit about Peruvian Connection.
Okay, well, since 1976, Peruvian Connection has made ethnographic textiles the point of reference for its luxury fiber knitwear collections. And these luxury fiber knitwear collections are made in cottage industries by artisans in Peru. And our signature fiber is alpaca. We also offer a range in Peruvian Pima cotton, but alpaca has always been our core fiber. We also are famous for our luxury outerwear and our original design print jersey dresses and our handcrafted accessories. The company began when I was doing anthropological research in Peru. I was working on a project on studying women selling in Andean marketplaces, and I was down there for a year. And halfway through the year, my mother had a birthday. She turned 50, and I flew back up to the States for her 50th birthday. And the serendipity of the whole business was that I had to look everywhere for a suitable birthday present for my mom. And she was not crazy about the old textiles that I loved. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I did find a gorgeous pure alpaca sweater. It was made out of alpaca fiber, and it had this wonderful alpaca fur trim. And I brought it up for her birthday. We went to a birthday party. Her friends were crazy about it, and they said, why don't you start importing these from Peru? Well, that was kind of a crazy idea, but on the spur of the moment, my mom and I decided to start a business together. We'd always been very close, and it kind of was a natural outcome. It began as a tiny mail order and wholesale company, and we ran ads in the New Yorker, Smithsonian, Wall Street Journal. We also sold to boutiques. We never went for the route of like folk art or import stores. We really looked for fashion boutiques, and we sold to Henry Bendel, the original Henry Bendel. Mm-hmm. And in 1979, we caught a huge break with a write-up in the New York Times, which hit the wire of services, and within 3 months, we had 5,000 requests for a catalog. And so just to kind of condense the history of the company since then, we had the good fortune of riding the crest of early wish book catalogs throughout the 1980s. We were able to build up a substantial customer file, and in the 90s, we expanded to Europe and hit the beginning of the wish book catalog phenomenon over there. And at the end of the 90s, PC entered the online internet world. That was very exciting, but of course it was a sea change for catalogs. It wasn't until 2008 that we opened our first retail store. We now have a total of 8, and we're fully omni-channel.
So that's interesting, kind of the background of the brand. So you didn't have any retail experience when you started the company. It was kind of this, experience with your mother and the birthday gift, and, this idea popped up, but your work history prior to that, you hadn't been involved in retail at all.
That's correct. My entire background was anthropology, archaeology, and I had no business background. I had a fair amount of art background, but no business, and certainly nothing in marketing or in retail.
Very interesting. So one of the things that I've learned about the company is Peruvian Connection's commitment to environmental sustainability, and that's, it's core to the brand mission. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about why that is.
Okay, well, it's kind of I have a sort of a circular answer to this question. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's maybe due to my background in anthropology. I've always had a somewhat broader notion of what sustainability means than strictly environmental sustainability. I've always thought in terms of the kind of the cultural ecology, that is that the biological and cultural processes that enable a population to live within the constraints of a physical environment. Well, human adaptation is really depends on these biological and cultural processes in order to survive and reproduce in a changing environment. The thing about the Andes, which is where my focus was, is that it is the home to some 50,000 herding families, and who represent, probably hundreds of thousands of people who maintain their existence in the Andes based on alpaca and this wonderful fiber. In addition to that fact, the animal alpaca is probably the most environmentally friendly fiber producing animal on the planet. And alpacas live at like 3,800 meters in the Andes, and they live on land that is sparsely inhabited, in fact, almost uninhabitable, and the only thing they can grow up there are potatoes. Well, alpacas nibble on this ichu grass, and they also happen to have softly padded feet, so they do virtually no damage to the environment. So they are literally almost, you think about the effect of cattle in the States. Well, alpacas in the Andes basically have they're just almost like no impact, versus virtually no impact to their terrain.
So then let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the alpaca, and your product. Then let's zero in on that a bit and talk about kind of the commitment, how that commitment is exemplified, and talk about your products that you sell, and also the way you're sourcing those products and your supply chain in terms of how that aligns with your commitment to environmental sustainability.
Well, we have always seen the cottage industries with whom we work as enterprises that support knitters, their families. And so again, I'm going back to my sustainability need, not only of the environment, but of the people and the culture in the Andes. And we've always avoided practices that can be detrimental to businesses, things that routinely, you ask about my anthropology, my business background. Well, it's really more shaped by my anthropological background.
Right.
To the detriment. This is like, our bankers don't want to hear this, but it's absolutely true. But we, for example, never do practice things like price shopping, where you go from one cottage industry to the next and say, can you make this a little bit cheaper, or whatever it's, because what happens then is not only is that business weakened, but guess what? It puts pressure on workers, on the knitters' wages, and anyway, for a lot of reasons, we don't. We have never done practices like that, and we're also there year after year for these companies that have grown with us over these 43 years that we've been in business.
Yeah, and I would imagine it would devalue what you've built. It would devalue the brand and the commitment you've had to these people and the products if you like you said, price shop there.
That's correct.
So obviously then you've kind of built this into the business in terms of your commitment to environmental sustainability. So then the second part of that is, okay, how are we going to go out and kind of tell our story, tell our brand story, market this, promote this commitment, which is an increasingly attractive feature to consumers. So what are you doing to kind of tell the Peruvian Connection story, to tell the story of the alpaca and your product, and the people that live in the Andes?
Well, to be honest, we need to do more to get our story out there. Ours is a really beautiful, authentic story that couldn't be more appealing to the millennials and younger shoppers these days who have who share our concern, frankly, about the environment as well as the lives of the people making our products. I mean, I can't tell you how many youngsters I've run into who've said, "Yeah, but who makes these, and are they paid?" And I just smile, and I love the answers that we can give those people. As I mentioned earlier, also about this story that we are telling. It really is about my personal passion and our design team's collective passion for, and also passion for and appreciation for the textile traditions that we are attempting to preserve and also appreciate and share that appreciation. Textiles around the world are a primary form of cultural expression, and the ethnographic textiles that inspire our collections have a story to tell. And we believe it's a story that resonates with consumers, especially those who care about the values of the brands they buy from. And those people will want to hear this story.
What are some of the channels you're using to tell that story? You mentioned you started as a mail order business. Are you still publishing catalogs, and how about online and your own website and social and email? Or I imagine some of those are the channels that you're interacting with consumers in.
Yes, we began as, and I mentioned earlier, we began as a mail order catalog, and younger shoppers were actually kind of coming back to catalogs. They were out of vogue, obviously, when the internet suddenly appeared upon the scene. Everyone predicted the demise of the catalog industry, but in fact, it has really served us well in communicating as being continuing to be a primary vehicle. Ours is this story that is not so easy to explain. It really has to do with the culture. It has to do with the fiber. It has to do with our reason for being. We're not merchants at all. We are really designers who have this story that we want to get out there, this product that we want to get out there that really reflects what our customers want. And our core brand message is artisan apparel for nomads and romantics. Increasingly, online brands are turning to catalogs as a conduit for acquiring customers and deepening their connections with those customers. And we've always believed that our catalogs needed to provide a context for our collections. And that's why we've traveled to places like Malta and Morocco and Corsica and Italy and South America, many times Peru, Argentina, Mexico, really all over, seeking out locations that were steeped in history, that had where we could find ancient walls, where we could find patinaed surfaces, and the imperfections that really were the authentic backgrounds for the products that had true cultural significance, for the products that embodied, that were really communicating what this history was through textiles. And we use that same energy, that same imagery online that we use in the catalogs, and of course a great range more imagery online, and especially in the branding portions of our website. So both of these media kind of play back and forth with each other, and then we can talk about retail stores a little bit later, but that also.
Okay. And then you mentioned, Annie, the kind of the growth of international. So you just touched on that. I'm interested in kind of your customer acquisition, and this isn't this new online startup brand. This is as you mentioned, a traditional brand that began as in the mail order business, 40 years. You're selling kind of a higher end product. What are you doing to kind of connect with those younger shoppers, and and are you seeing different behaviors, from them, a U.S. shopper versus some of your international customers?
Those are all very good questions. I'll start with the last question you asked about our international business. By definition, the mail order, the online, the direct business is based on numbers, and like if we had been forced to create a new collection and a new catalog for international markets, we basically would not have been able to do that. It would have been financially prohibitive. What worked for us is that we were able to identify a similar customer in all of the markets we went after. So the UK, there was a customer, we were so shocked. There was a customer that interestingly enough bought exactly in the same order, if maybe a little bit different sequence of products, but they bought the same products and fell in love with the same things. The same was true in Germany when we got into the German market. And certainly there's some differences in how we approach those markets, but by and large, they're the same. And I think that we are finding that those kind of basic things that appeal to our international customers appeal to all ages as well. When people ask me what the age of our customer is, I say, well, we have product that is appropriate or that is appealing to anyone from 8 to 80, and that is absolutely true. I've seen kids come in with their parents saying, "I want that T-shirt," with the alpaca on it. So and so many of our things, it depends on how one styles them. You could wear them so many ways. I mean, our things are classic. They are timeless. They are not. They are also very interesting as far as like fiber, the colors that we use, the designs that we use. Some pieces are highly patterned, others are just very beautiful colors that are rich tweeds and heathers that you can blend in any wardrobe. So as far as how we're appealing to the younger generation, I think it's definitely the internet. The internet is helping us, and social media, Instagram, those things that we're using, we're getting people from of all ages that react to seeing what it is that we're putting out there online, but also in the social media realm, and also our retail stores. The retail stores, virtually everybody walks by them. Walks by a retail store at some point in their life. So that's kind of ageless, and we try to make sure that we're appealing in that channel as well.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question, Annie, in terms of the brick and mortar and how that kind of fits into Peruvian Connection's plans, current plans, your future plans, and the second part of that in terms of, you've mentioned these great things that you're doing online rather, how are you connecting the two between stores and what you're doing online?
Well, even though our stores are very different from our website, and our catalogs, they are absolutely an extension of our brand. So people, when they walk into our stores, feel like, wow, I'm in a Peruvian Connection environment. And in fact, we ventured into retail stores. We didn't actually get into retail stores until 2008. But we ventured into these stores with a primary goal of building and providing a three-dimensional face to our brand. And just as a side note, I personally oversaw both the site selection and the design of each store, the look and feel of each store. In fact, they really reflect very much the way our house at home, in Kansas City, looks. Where it's a collection of treasures that I've hauled back from anthropological digs or archaeological digs and the research I've done in different areas, as well as the location shoots around the world in my travels. And these pieces that I've brought back from other cultures really have figured into the design of the stores. We opened the stores, for starters, we opened the stores in authentic neighborhoods in New York and Santa Fe and Washington, D.C., Chicago, London, Boston, and most recently in Aspen. When I say an authentic neighborhood, we would never go to a mall. We would always go to an area that was historically, that had some roots there, that was, something that was made out of old stone, and typically these neighborhoods reflect the eras, whether it's the arts and craft era or the Victorian era. Is our Washington D.C. stores in one of the most beautiful Victorian buildings, right across from, actually right next to Ford's Theater in Washington D.C. in very close to the White House. And each store embodies the spirit of Peruvian connection while remaining true to its historic context. For example, our store in London, we brought in 400-year-old floors, if you can believe it, and we replaced the linoleum floors that the most recent tenant had put in. But our goal was to make the store feel as if it had always been there. So when people would walk in, they would feel like, oh wow, I'm in an environment. It was never about, what do they call that? Value engineering. Oh my gosh, no, we never value engineer anything. And yet the product is beautifully displayed, but it feels more like you're in someone's home than in a retail store. The other extremely important goal was to expose our customers to this luxury fiber alpaca and to Pima cotton. These are tactile, incredibly soft, beautiful fibers, and we treat them with the utmost respect. Our collections are beautifully finished. Their products are beautifully finished, and they're subtly detailed. We really think of them as a classic masterpiece, each one. Even as simple as the simplest sweater, it's still beautifully finished, and there is still a reason why that piece is in the collection. It's not just, hey, we can run red. We'll have a beautiful red that has brown heathered into the color so that it works almost like an old textile color. Well, of course, these pieces are a part of these historic and ethnographic textiles. That's what's influenced them. So you would never find a Macy's red or a Chico's green. Did I really say that? Occasionally you will find a super bright, but it's only because it's kind of that year's fashion color, and we want to maintain, we want to continue to be relevant while being classic.
Yeah, and I would think in terms of your stores, you're not selling a commodity product, obviously. So the ability to touch and feel it and kind of experience it firsthand has got to provide some real value to the shopper.
It does, and the internet allows us truly to integrate all of these different channels. It is our goal is to provide a seamless customer experience so that when they walk into our retail store, behind the scenes, behind the beauty that they'll encounter, behind the scenes is an internet that provides us with a system that connects us to our warehouse back in Kansas, and which is where our home base is, in Tonganoxie, Kansas, at the family farm. Mm-hmm. But it connects us to online. It connects us to, and then also the catalogs are displayed there as well. And we also have a wonderful call center, which is another channel call center in both Europe and as well as the States. So all of these points of contact with the customer are all interconnected, and as we get better at this through time, it's a really great experience for people shopping Peruvian Connection.
So then my final question is, this is a 40-year-old brand, obviously has a real commitment to, as we talked about, environmental sustainability and the product. So what's next, really? That's kind of, where are you focusing your attention as you look to kind of continue the growth that Peruvian Connection has enjoyed?
Well, I believe that all of our channels, whether it's the certainly online, digital marketing is definitely incredibly plastic, incredibly expandable, incredibly. I mean, we don't even know what the future is there. It's just getting more exciting by the day. But also the catalog itself is evolving into more of a kind of a lookbook. That catalog marketing is not the way it was always with, the old Montgomery Ward and Sears and those things that tended to be more encyclopedias of products. Now we are really using our catalog as a way, and we need to do it even more as a way to connect with our customers, to bring our brand to life. And a lot of people that really started out online have come to realize that catalogs are really critical in getting a catalog in a person's hand reminds them to go online and tells them about, wow, there's a retail store in Washington, D.C. or in New York. All of these channels really kind of feed on each other, support each other, and it's a story that is told in all these different channels. New products, yeah, we've always got a few up our sleeve. We've got some coming up hopefully later in the year that are very exciting, a whole new area of PC. When I say PC, Peruvian Connection. Right. And but we really plan to use all of the range of our current communications, and I'm sure around the bend there will be new forms as well.
Great. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank Annie Hurlbut of Peruvian Connection for joining me today. Please check out our podcast channel page, mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. But make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. Please take the time to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and I look forward to you joining us on the next episode of Total Retail Talks.